In the reptile hobby, there are tons of different products and tools that can be used to give your reptile and your chameleon a long, happy, healthy life. But there's also, unfortunately, a bunch out there that are actually very dangerous for your chameleon. So I'm going to be giving you guys 5 dangerous products you should avoid using for your pet chameleon. So without further ado, let's get into the video. First up, we have red heat bulbs. Those are a big no-no when it comes to chameleon keeping. Behind me, you'll see in my enclosures that I have white heat bulbs for my chameleons. These are very safe for your chameleons. The wattage you use is going to vary, but you'll notice that they are producing a white light. The red heat bulbs, while very tempting because I usually put a picture of chameleon on the box, are not recommended for chameleons. This has to do with the eyes of the chameleon and just their sensitivity to colors and how they use their eyes to, interpret different colors of their food and environment. And it gets pretty nitty-gritty scientific, and feel free to check out the chameleon forums if you want more detailed scientific papers that go deep into the reasons why red heat bulbs aren't recommended for chameleons. But the gist of it is they're not safe to use. And I know a lot of people will use them during the daytime, and even more people will use them at night, thinking that chameleons need a heat bulb during the cooler temperatures, but in actuality, chameleons need zero heat at night and actually benefit from the temperatures. So it'd be good to have your heat bulb on during the day and then turn all your lights off at night and ensure that the heat bulb that you do use is a white one. Speaking of bulbs, let's talk about UVB. So you'll also notice behind me that I have these long, skinny bulbs up there. One of them is the plant LED bar, that's to help my plants grow, but the other one is my chameleon's UVB bulb. I run a T5 Arcadia 6% UVB bulb on both of my enclosures. That is what is recommended for a chameleon because the T5 penetrates deeper into the enclosure than what is called a compact UVB bulb, which is what comes with the chameleon kit and is pretty commonly offered at your pet stores. But that is not recommended for a chameleon because it's basically a coiled up UVB bulb that only penetrates like 2 or 3 inches into the enclosure. So if your bulb, even if it's sitting on top of the enclosure, that's 2 to 3 inches, and then your chameleon's chilling down here or down here and is unable to get that UVB. Without having proper access and exposure to UVB, your chameleon is at very high risk for developing what is called metabolic bone disease, which can actually be fatal if not treated with the correction of proper UVB and supplementation. So I'm going to tell you right now, if you take anything away from this video, is to make sure you have the correct UVB bulb for your chameleon. And I do have multiple videos that dive deeper into this, so feel free to check those out. Something you could do if you have the small enclosure and you did get the T5 is you could actually raise the T5 up so that it is 48 inches from the bottom of the enclosure. So then you're basically simulating the correct gradients that would be provided if your enclosure was 48 inches tall until you're able to upgrade to the correct size enclosure. And some people do that by stacking books on the sides of the enclosure, or I've seen plastic cups as well, just some way to kind of lift that up and simulate the correct gradients. Now let's move on to some different decor options. Waterfalls are pretty commonly sold at pet stores, but are not recommended for chameleons. Reason being is that they are high risk for producing bacteria. If a piece of poop falls in there, a bug dies in there, just something grows in there, then your chameleon is at risk for being exposed to that bacteria, and that to me is just a risk that's not worth taking. They look super cool, like trust me, I know. There's some really, really cool looking waterfalls. Maybe you think, oh, we'll just use it for decor. Just recognize that you're taking a calculated risk by having a waterfall in there. Sure, you could clean it every single day, make sure it's totally clean, and you very well could safely use it with your chameleon. To me, that's just not a risk that I'd be willing to take when there are much safer options out there when it comes to hydrating your chameleon. Things like misters are great for hydration. Foggers are great for nighttime, raising that humidity, and drippers are great to use throughout the day. All 3 of those have their pros and cons and benefits when it comes to providing an all-inclusive hydration strategy for your pet chameleon. And I do have videos all about how to water a chameleon that kind of goes deep into each one of those methods, and I encourage you to check those out. Another decor item that can be risky to use would be any sort of fake vine. This would be a mossy vine, one of those foam vines, one of those like textural vines, anything basically that is not a natural branch has an increased risk when using it with your pet chameleon. The moss can stay moist and grow bacteria on it. The foam can flake off and become an impaction risk. Your chameleon could try to eat the moss off the branch. There are just lots of things that can go wrong. Doesn't mean they will happen, doesn't mean they will go wrong, but again, increased risk. And you have to decide for yourself if that's a risk you're willing to take. Or alternatively, you could just use live plants that you know are chameleon safe and natural branches that would provide your chameleon tons of climbing options without having to use fake vines. So my advice to you would be to avoid using them and just go all natural, but again, choice is yours. The fifth and final product that I want to talk about is not one specifically, but just generally enclosures that are too small for your chameleon. Time and time again, I see a lot of new chameleon keepers purchase enclosures that are too small. Either that's all they had available in the shop that they were buying from, I can get that, or they're just unaware of the proper enclosure sizes needed for a chameleon. There's lots of reasons why you may purchase a smaller enclosure. Just recognize by doing so, you're putting your chameleon's health at risk, potentially. And the reason for this is because you have that smaller enclosure, all of your gradings are completely different than what would be in a 48-inch tall enclosure, which is the recommended size for a veiled panther or Jackson's chameleon. If your UVB bulb is on top of your screen, which is what most keepers do when they run their 6% T5, 5.0 UVB bulbs on a 48-inch tall enclosure, so then you have the proper UVB gradient, right? Say that enclosure's yay big. Now you went and got an enclosure that's this big. So your UVB gradient just went from this to this. So now you have much more concentrated UVB inside that enclosure, which can be potentially dangerous for your chameleon. So even though you upgrade your UVB bulb and you're rocking the T5, there's still a lot of health implications that come with it because your enclosure is too small. Same thing when it comes to temperature gradients, right? If you have that basking temperature of 80, 85, amazing. But if you have in a small enclosure, then your chameleon doesn't have a lot of room to get out of that heat. Versus if they had a taller enclosure, then they could have the warm part and the cool part, along with lots of places to climb and hide. So there's just a lot of difficulty and increased risk that comes with using a smaller enclosure. So I would really encourage you to just upgrade your chameleon to the proper 2x2 by 4 foot tall enclosure and just get that enclosure from the beginning. If you're watching this before getting a chameleon, and if you are having that small enclosure, just work towards providing that larger enclosure and your chameleon will reap the benefits. So there you guys have it. Those are 5 products I would avoid using when it comes to your pet chameleon. And hopefully now you can understand why these are all potentially dangerous, and now you know some alternatives that you can use instead. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Leave any questions or comments down below. Feel free to subscribe so when I post a new video. You can follow Neptune and all my chameleons on social media at Neptune the Chameleon. As always, feel free to check out my link down below for discounts, Patreon, merch, booking a video call with me. Would love to chat with you. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye! Which is the work. Did you just eat a bug? I think Luna just ate a bug right behind me.